Hey, how are you today? So I want to shoot a video where I can explain a little bit about how this whole channel came about. And it begins with being in the hospital, being taken care of through some really difficult, challenging times, including one of those moments where out of body experience, and very similar to other people who have those near death experiences, wasn't all that different for me. Um, I know Carl Jung had one. I just heard about Tesla and his vision of life after death and all of his experiments around energy and that we're all energetic beings. And at this point, it's nice because it's a pretty common idea is that, yeah, everything is energy. We're all, when you break us down into the subatomic particles, we're mostly space. So all that being said, why do this? One is because I realize how really tirelessly the nurses are at work, taking care of patients one after another, meeting incredible needs, and I get to talk to the nurses in my service to the hospital system as a psychotherapist, and I provide services to the whole staff, all the hospital workers from all over, and their families. And I've been doing short-term solution-focused therapy for a long time, but I'm at a place in my career where all of that stuff doesn't work unless you sort of get to the core of it all. Um, and so I thought this is a good place for us to talk about some deeper psychological things to help people get out of the malaise of life, get out of the pain and the suffering, get away from anxiety, all the stresses and strains of life, depression, all the things that make it an unpleasant experience, and move into a place where you can enjoy yourself, where life feels like it's worth living, and where you're finding peace and joy and serenity, and not having it disturbed and upset. The other reason is that both of my mothers were nurses. Sometime I'll tell you the whole story, but I was adopted, and so my birth mother was a nurse, and she was in a MASH unit. And the physician that she was dating, she thought they were going to be together forever and ever. And so when pregnancy happened, she said, "Hey, we've got some good news." And he said, "Hey, well, I'm already married and I have a family of my own. You're on your own." And I'm happy for the decision that she made because I get to be here with you today. Um, and later in life, I met her, an amazing woman. I'll tell you more about her as the channel kind of goes on. But adopted by wonderful people, and my adopted mother also a nurse. And it's interesting because the person who's helping with the technology of all this is a student nurse. So it's like this whole community of people around me. So a special shout out, thank you, but also just a special group of people whose hearts are in an amazing place. They're willing to be in MASH and put their lives on the line for other people in dangerous situations. Other places just to be of service to fellow human beings. So that's sort of the group of people. The other group of people that I'm really interested in are folks that are at that point in life where they're not sure they want to go on. That life has lost all of its meaning, all of its purpose, and it's like, what else is there? Particularly in the springtime, it's a dangerous time for people who have any kind of suicidal inclinations, because this is the time where there's this renewal and there's sort of a little bit more extra energy available, and that particular population, I don't want to go through another season, another year of kind of the same, repeating that same cycle. Enough is enough. I've had it. I'm done. I'm finished. And we know that it's not a particular segment of the population. It's everybody. It's everywhere. People who are really successful, people who are really struggling. Last year, the golf world was stunned by a fellow who had periods of depression and had some challenges with his game, but everything had come together. He had a new trainer. He had somebody else doing the mind work with him. Everything was really looking tremendous and amazing for him. He was in the middle of a tournament up on the leaderboard, very near the top. You could see how just a couple little tweaks, he was probably going to win the tournament. He went home, and during his time at home, he took his life. And it's just my heart goes out to family and friends and people who have to deal with the aftershock and after that, because I'm in that community as well. My half brother, my birth mother's son, who I also met, and we became good friends, close friends, at one point in his life was really struggling and decided enough is enough. And it was this kind of time of the year, so that springtime, that couldn't see any way out of it, um, and made that decision. So, and we'll talk about that as again as we go on in the types. But I just wanted you to know that's sort of the background of why we're here, and what I think that I have to contribute to the whole conversation of how do we live our lives, how do we find serenity and peace and joy and a life worth living, is that it begins with needing to change the narrative. You're not broken. I think the problem with self-help community and everything else that starts off with there's something wrong with you, we have to fix it. And a lot of psychotherapy is that way. It's aimed at people who, well, we have to fix something. You don't have to fix anything. You're not broken. But the beliefs that you've come to hold, treasure, that you're not questioning, you don't look at, a lot of them are just unconscious, or things that happen in childhood, or we have life experiences. We draw some conclusions from it. We decide that's the way life works. And then it becomes part of our story. And the only author of your story is you. It's whatever, however you're living it and believing it. And the way to begin to make that change and shift is to look at, well, what is it that I believe? And why do I say that? Because two people can have the same experience, like say soldiers in a war, fighting side by side. One of them comes home and suffers with PTSD. The other soldier says, it wasn't such a good experience, but it's war. Different beliefs about what happened, different ways of describing it and telling it to themselves. One person's able to leave that moment in their life and move on to the present moment. The other person brings that with them. And that's how we know it's story that we're telling ourselves. It's the internal narrative that's going on, as opposed to some universal truth. But our perspective, when we don't examine it, tells us it's universal. Everybody feels that way. If you had been through what I went through, Tom, you don't know how many times I hear that. If you knew what I knew, if you experienced what I experienced, this is the way you would be. And it takes some work at understanding that that's how you are, but that's not who everybody is who went through that experience. And sometimes that's hard to hear, because then we have to take more responsibility for our lives. We have to take our lives, as Carl Jung talks about it, we have to take our lives into our own hands and do something with it. And in part of our own search for meaning, it's part of the process. But you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to do it by yourself. There's certainly a lot of neuro tools and neuro-linguistic tools to help us get through the challenges of that and to make that experience worthwhile. So that's some of the things that we're going to talk about on the channel and sort of look at together so that we don't have to kind of languish in life and struggle in life needlessly. And I know, some people are going to say, Tom, if you had the childhood I had, I had an unusual childhood. I was abandoned at birth. Some of you in the adoption community will know what I'm talking about. When you're an adoptee, you don't, especially, and I always knew it. It wasn't a secret. I didn't discover it later in life. I always knew that I was, and I had these, as I said, I had amazing people who loved me. But you don't look like anybody else. You realize pretty early on that nephews, nieces, cousins, all these other people, including your parents, don't exactly look like you. There may be some similarities, but sort of like Superman or Wonder Woman, kind of waking up from having been out in the island of, or the the planet of Kryptonite, and you come here and it's like things are different. So there's we all that's my point, is that we all have these different things we have to deal with and adjust to. And the stories that we tell ourselves about them will make all of the difference. I've been doing this long enough and helping enough people that I know that when the story changes, when the narrative that's running in the background has made a shift, and you've shifted some of those beliefs, and the unconscious is now supporting you, and the ego is supporting you, and it's like, I can be this other person. I can overcome these what seem to be insurmountable obstacles in my life. I can overcome them now, and I can live a different kind of life. I can try. I don't have to trust everybody, but I can come to a point of being able to trust people. I met someone over the weekend, and when I first met her, she's just an amazing person. There's just the vitality of her life just exudes from her. And she grew up not a wealthy person, had some struggles. She kind of hinted at that. Went from high school into the military, had a long, very distinguished career of 20 years. In that time, got married, had a couple of children, is now making some career shifts. That's actually what brought the two of us together, to sort of talk a little bit about that. But as I got to know her over several conversations over the weekend, she was telling me, because we got to talking about how we have to change our beliefs. And she said, yes, I know. And for her father, she said, I saw my father get arrested. And he was being arrested because of his repeated sexual abuse of me. And she said, I have a different view of that now, but growing up, I just felt worthless. My mother, alcoholic, not a happy alcoholic, very sad and depressed. She said I had to do a lot of extra cleaning up in the house. I was parentified pretty early on. I took care of the younger siblings. She said, but by age 17, I decided to take her 18. I decided to take my own life. She said, fortunately, I wasn't successful, but that was a turning point for me. And I thought, well, maybe there is something else. And she said, that's when the military became a possibility. She said, I learned a lot of life skills through that organization. They helped me a lot. I learned to take responsibility for myself. I learned as I went up in the rank to take responsibility and be with other people and manage a group and become a leader. And I learned leadership skills. And then I realized I have to be a leader in my own life. And so we talked a little bit about leadership and self-leadership, and again, some things that we'll talk about on this channel. And then she's made another career shift and was talking about the difficulty. She said, I have difficulty sometimes getting online and talking to people. I don't like to be on camera. And I said, well, you're doing a marvelous job of it. What was the turning point for you? And she said, well, somebody said to me, if you could say something to that 17-year-old girl that you were, would you hesitate for a second to go and talk to that person? And she said, no, I would not. She said, that was the turning point for me. I realized the people that I'm talking to are those people who need that word of encouragement, who need that word of support and help. And then for myself, I realized, oh, that's actually a pretty big motivator for me. It's the same kind of thing. It's that life is worth living. And when we change the internal story, when we change the internal belief system, shift it to the way we want it to be, life responds to us. That's what she was experiencing. Life was responding to her. and it works. So we want to explore that a little bit on this channel and see what are the ways in which that can happen to you. Now, obviously, a faster way to do that is individually working together. And so there are some links somewhere in here where if you want to do that one-on-one with me, you can do that. Remember to like the channel, subscribe to the channel, please, and then share it with your friends, people that you know maybe are struggling right now or just need some words of encouragement. Like this to sort of be like a, I don't know, maybe like a coffee house where we all kind of get together and have our cup of tea and we just get to talk a little bit. And I'll share with you some of the lessons that I've learned from dealing with folks who've been sitting on the couch, and we'll use some examples from their lives, anonymously, of course, but we'll use some examples from their lives of how do we make those shifts? How do we get unstuck? How can we move forward in our lives? So remember to like the channel, please. Share it with others. Subscribe. And if you want to talk to me one-on-one, please do so. Leave comments in the comment section. And I look forward to getting to know you. Wishing you all the best.